Hello, football fans, and welcome to RougeRadio.com. I'm Kevin Garbulo, and today I'm joined by former Sherbrooke quarterback, standout quarterback, JP Charret from acrofoot.com. Thanks for joining us, JP.
Hey, thanks for having me on board, Kevin.
Perfect. I'm excited for this one because last week was the interlock between the AUS and the RSQ EQ, and that one didn't go too well for the AUS. AUS getting swept at 0-4. But we'll start off with the big matchup that happened Saturday night with Laval defeating Acadia. What do you have to say about that one? And that was the big thing there was Laval had some turnover. We'll go into that one first.
Yeah, well, Laval, obviously the top team in Quebec for the past 10 years, and Acadia being the top team in the AUS. Finishing atop last year and then coming on strong this year with a win on opening night. So obviously you have the two best teams in both conferences facing off in Laval. First time they ever hold a night game there, so 15,000 plus fans, big crowd. But in the end, it's really hard for anyone to come in at Pep Stadium and win against Laval there. It's been over 8 years that a team hasn't won there. So, tough luck for Acadia. They come in prepared. At half it was 9-8 for Laval. So, they played a very good first half. But as we all know, to be able to beat such a good team, you need to play a full 60 minutes. And in the end, Acadia just couldn't do that. So I think, from an Acadia standpoint, they travel all the way to Laval, come in, perform, show that they belong in the same league as the Lavals and the other top teams in the country, but they just can't come back with a win. But there's a lot of positives to come out of this. They haven't been sacked once, and they sacked the opposing quarterback, I think, 3 times. Didn't turn over the ball much, nearly 300 yards of total offense. So a lot of positive for Acadia. And for Laval, it's another win, but it doesn't come in great fashion. So 3 wins, 0 losses thus far, but they don't look as strong as they've ever looked. So Laval needs to keep on building, but so far it's not as they're not as strong as they usually are.
Well, for those who don't know, Laval fired, or their offense coordinator in the press release said he stepped down for professional reasons. That was Dwayne John. He was replaced by Justin Etche. What can you tell us about that and the turmoil there and what we could see going forward with the Laval offense?
Well, there's 2 sides to this story, and the side that everybody knows about is, in the press conference, Laval has made it clear, and it was the constant message throughout the whole organization, is that Dwayne John, who's been the OC for 2 years, former all-star player for Laval. So the word is that he stepped down, he wanted to reorient his career, but obviously, it raises some questions. You're talking about a guy that wants to be a football coach, or at least, expressed the need to be a football coach for the past 5 years. And, 2 games into the season, decides to step down. So he obviously, it raises some questions. And the facts prove that he might have been slowly pushed out. Laval, after 2 games, they were near the bottom in almost defensive categories except for rushing yards. So you're definitely not what you're looking for when you're a Laval team that looks to be a contender nationwide year in, year out. You have a top head coach in Glenn Constantine. You have a top defensive coordinator in Marc Fortier. And then offensively, they just weren't as good. So they happen to have Justin Etier around the organization. He was working the academics for the Rougeau players. So Etier, as you probably know, he was the offensive coordinator for over 10 years. There at Laval, won 4 Vanier Cups. He taught, he was the coordinator when Mathieu Bertrand was there, now with the Eskimos in the CFL. He was quarterback when Benoit Roux was there, a head Crichton winner. Obviously, Coach Etier is one of the top offensive minds in the country. He's proved it over the years. So they kind of push out Dwayne John to bring in Etier. So, like you said, a lot of turmoil, and especially this game in the 3rd week of the season. But they had to bring in they had to dynamize their offense right now because they weren't getting the results that they needed. And, may it be a push out, may it be a stepping down, it doesn't really matter. In the end, it's just saying that's the new OC there, and he's trying to make it happen for Laval.
And the other big game, the closest game of the whole interlock series, was your alma mater, the Sherbrooke Warriors, defeating St. Mary's 23-22. And I watched that game. It was on Eastlink. And what a fantastic finish. Sherbrooke should have blown out St. Mary's, but St. Mary's hung around. What's the secret right now for Sherbrooke as they've gone back in their winning ways? They're 2-1 now, and they were supposed to have a slow start this year.
Well, yeah, and you know, I didn't get to watching the Bishops at the Montreal game, but you know, from what I know of Sherbrooke, and obviously right now, and you know, we can look at the stat line. It's pretty obvious. All their offense is around Jeremy Rock, you know, second-year pivot. He's top of the league, you know, across Canada in almost every category. You know, second in yards, most in pass attempts. He's got 130 pass attempts in 3 games, so he's on pace to nearly 400 pass attempts. That is a lot of passes to be attempted. But on the good side, you know, they try a lot of passes, but he hasn't turned the ball over once through the air. You know, 7 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So I think for them right now, it's all about solidifying, you know, their pass game and being you know, the offense that they need to be with new receivers. You know, obviously lost Simon Charbonneau-Campo, former MVP, to the CFL. Same with Ismail Bamba. So it's just kind of building that chemistry on offense around, you know, their star player, which is the quarterback. You know, you got some question marks though, because on the offense, you know, their star player is J-Rock, and they don't have the kind of backup that they probably would like to have behind them, so they need to protect him well. Last year, through all 9 games, they had 13 sacks allowed. This year, after 3 games, they already have 13 sacks allowed. So you wonder, you know, if they're going to be able to protect him throughout the whole season. And another question mark on offense, you know, are they going to be able to establish a run game? Right now, you know, their biggest run game was maybe a 50 or 60 yards outing, so they really need to be more balanced on offense to protect that quarterback. And your question is, you know, what about that slow start? When, you know, Sherbrooke this year, they got a new head coach, obviously, David Lessard, you know, moving up from offensive coordinator, keeping his duties as the coordinator, but moving up to head coach. They got a new defensive coordinator, Coach Poziode was a special teams guy, now is the defensive guy. And they got a new special teams coordinator. So right now, you know, as for the slow start, I think it's normal. I think it's expected, you know, when you have 3 new guys in place. And you know, they're kind of building on this. You know, they got blown out by Montreal in their first game, but right now looking good. You know, last week against McGill, and this week against St. Mary's. And like you said, you know, huge win for them because it's never easy to go in at St. Mary's on homecoming day and beating them. So it took them everything they had, and it got done on the last second field goal. So for them, that's a huge confidence booster. And now they go back to Montreal this week to challenge the Carabins, who, like I said, blown them out in the first week. So, hey, we know in football it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So, you know, hopefully for Sherbrooke they get to continue that streak next week.
And Antigonish Concordia defeating St. FX 41-20. Now the other big game of the weekend, kind of big game. Mount Allison losing 36-9 to McGill. This is McGill's first win since 2009. How exciting is this for McGill, especially since it's been such a long time coming for Clint Utley and the McGill Redmen?
And it is definitely an exciting time to be a McGill Redmen. You know, I talked with Coach Utley and Coach Pat Bois after the game, and they were relieved. They were happy for those veteran guys to finally get a win and move it out of the way. And they were especially happy for the young guys, you know, their recruits that are getting a lot of playing time this year to finally get that first one and start building. Because those recruits that are getting a lot of play time right now are not used to losing. They come from winning programs in CJEP and across the country. So they want them to start winning as soon as possible. So right now, and you know, they beat Mount Allison, which, you know, isn't one of the best teams in the country. You know, obviously Mount Allison not at the same level as the Laval, the Carabins, and the Acadia of this world. But at the same time, you know, for them, it was a great win. You know, they did it in high fashion. You know, they won on 3 aspects of the game. You know, special teams. Their returner, Van Ness, the second-year guy, is really explosive. It looks like he's one of the best in the conference right now. You know, on offense, they started Ryan Bondi, 5th-year pivot, who played as a starter his first game of the season. You know, had some concussion-like symptoms from camp. So his first game comes in, only plays 1 half, and he's, you know, 3 TDs by the air, no interceptions, 1 TD on the ground. So plays a huge game for them. So that kind of solidifies, you know, who's going to be their starting quarterback moving into the season. And on defense, you know, that Mick Donovan impact is getting felt right now. You know, they bring him from Western, and he's with his brother Pat, you know, coaching that defensive unit. And right now, you know, they're looking good. You know, they got young players out there, but players that are playing with their heart and playing with confidence, and their defensive front is really solid. So, you know, it's a huge win, and it's especially huge, like I said, to get it out of the way and finally start moving on. And who knows, if McGill keeps building like they are right now, they could come and squeeze into the playoffs. It will all depend what happens when they play Concordia, Bishops, if they can manage a win versus a Sherbrooke or a Montreal, some kind of an upset there. But McGill right now, they played hard. They recruited hard this off season. They had some donations made to the program. They recruited coaches, players, and it's all that effort that Clint Utley has put together is finally paying off. And right now you're looking at a strong Redmond team that is nowhere near the team that we saw last year. So right now McGill is on a hot streak. It's their first win, but especially the program is on the rise, and it's a bright future ahead for them.
And now to start up for next week, previewing, we'll start from right to left. St. Mary's hosting Acadia. Acadia right now 1-1 on the season. St. Mary's 0-2. This is a big week for both teams. What do you expect in that little matchup in the second of the three set?
Well, for St. Mary's, it's hard for them to kind of bounce back from losing their star quarterback, Jack Creighton, who's out for the season. So for them, it's trying to build under new pivot, Jean Legault, who's a first-year starter. So for them, on offense, they'll probably have to rely on the run game and try to make it happen with the run. But they'll have, they'll need some explosive plays from their explosive players. And you're looking at, Jameek Taylor has to make an impact on the field. He needs to touch the ball. You need to give the ball out to the guys who can make it happen. Because on the other side, you got a hungry Acadia team that will be playing at St. Mary's. And for them, it's like they come back from Laval with a loss, but probably with a lot of confidence as well. And Cal Grids will be looking to pile on some points and get that offense rolling as soon as he can. So I think, obviously it's always hard to lose, to win a game away, especially at St. Mary's. But right now, Acadia is looking strong because of that veteran leadership at quarterback. I think that's lacking for St. Mary's, unfortunately. So, I think Acadia comes up with a big win there and solidifies their position as the top team in the AUS.
And in the queue, we have Sherbrooke playing Montreal in a repeat of Week 1. Sherbrooke losing that game in a blowout, as you mentioned earlier. Do you see something different happening this time with Sherbrooke on the road?
Well, definitely it's going to be different. Sherbrooke is not the same team that they were Week 1. But coming in at Montreal, where the Carabins, always play, great game in front of the fans. And right now the Carabins look really strong. Most of the voters have them in the top 3, in the top 10 ballots. So, Carabin, right now, they always have a good defense. This year they have a great defense, led by an all-star defensive front. But what's special about this Carabin team is on offense. They can run the ball, they can pass the ball. And the only thing right now is can they protect the ball. So for Sherbrooke is to create, the goal is to create as many turnovers as they can and try to take advantage of those turnovers. If Sherbrooke can't win the turnover battle and stay disciplined in Montreal, they're going to have a long evening. So for them, protect the football, create some turnovers, stay disciplined, and most notably the last one is to protect Jeremy Rock, especially if they want to throw 40-plus passes yet again against Montreal, because that defensive front is relentless. And if they get to him like they did in the first game, it's going to be a long evening for J. Rock and for Sherbrooke, because the offense is surrounds, it's based around him. So if they can't protect him, it's a long evening for Sherbrooke. So my bet on this one, I think it's going to be closer, but Montreal still comes up with a win because right now they're looking really solid.
Well, it'd be a big win for Sherbrooke because they probably move into to get at least a home field advantage for the first round, at least in the playoffs. So that's on the line in that game. Now we'll move into the OUA, the big game last weekend. Queens hosting Western, and Queens coming out with a win 18-11. Take us through that matchup, as that was the one that was on University Rush on the score, and it was a fantastic game.
It's always big games. Those Queens-Western matchup right now that are like the two teams that are contending for that second spot behind McMaster. And, right now, Queens is looking really solid. Coach Sheehan has his team exactly where he wants them. Under third-year quarterback Billy McPhee, who's playing, phenomenal years so far. And they have that running game led by Ryan Grandberg, who's one of the Heck Crichton, contenders so far, leading his team with 150-plus yards yet again this week. On the Western side, I think they need to try and be more balanced on offense. They struggle passing the football, only 109 yards of passing offense against Queens and 2 interceptions. So right now you got veteran quarterback Donnie Marshall, who obviously we all know can run the ball really well, but they need to find some ways to complete some passes and involve all their receiving core. Only four receivers touching some footballs in that game. So Western losing some key players during the off season, especially running backs Silva and Riva. One to a transfer, the other to a CFL. Now they can carry on with San Vito, who's having a great season so far. So, great recruiting by Greg Marshall and his team to make sure to have the continuity at the running back position. But, they came into the Queens, and Queens, like you said, a hostile environment. We all know, they play on grass. And right now, Queens is looking really solid, and, they came up with a win. And that's what matters, in the dying seconds of the game, their defense hold on and sacked quarterback Marshall for a loss. And then, they managed to hold them on 4th down. And, Queens now is the second team in the OUA. Hands down, they beat Western. But now, got a matchup against McMaster. So for them, it's from one big game to another. And this week against McMaster, really the game to watch across the country.
Especially since McMaster hosting Queens, and that one's going to be their first matchup since what happened in the semifinals. We'll get to that in a bit. But Guelph defeating Waterloo 47-17. We have another lopsided score, McMaster beating Ottawa 45-16. The other matchup that I was looking at was Laurier beating York. Take us through that. Is Laurier coming back to win 24-20? York having some significant players in this game, especially Miles Given, but not able to come out with a victory.
York, and for them it's a process. They got a revamped coaching staff this year. Coaching with Miles Gibbon at quarterback. That NCAA transfer who's playing well. But he's not, he's not there yet. He's still learning about the Canadian game, that 3-down football, that wide field. And, he runs well. That's one thing that you'll never take away from him. He's posting 40-plus and 100-plus yards game in some contests. But so far, for them, it's a process. And they're trying to, make it to the top of those of that OUA conference. But it's a hard conference, like, Laurier, they were 0-2 coming in, but then, they come out with a great performance, turning the ball over 5 times, which is way too much to expect, if you want to win a game, but they still managed to get a win coming from behind, like you said. So right now, I like both teams. I like York to be a good team, but probably next season. Right now, it's a learning process. It's a learning curve. They might squeeze into the playoffs, at the end of the regular season because of that big conference, and there's a lot of spot to squeeze in there. But right now, both teams kind of unpredictable. York last week, 600-plus yards. Miles Gibbon is an all-star, but then this week, he struggled a little bit, fumbles the ball. I believe he fumbled it 2 times. So you can't go around running the football and think you can do it all. You got to protect the football. So right now, a process for York and for Laurier. They finally get that win. After being, I believe they were shut out by UFT in the opener. And right now, they get their first win, and who knows where that brings them. They got some good players on offense and on defense. So right now, take care of the football if you're a Laurier player, and who knows, sky's the limit.
And Windsor, just to round it out, Windsor defeating Toronto 55-4. Now we'll set the stage for next week's big matchup with McMaster hosting Queens, which seems to be the crown jewel event of the whole week in the CIS. If Queens can secure a victory there, or McMaster the other way, it seems like they'll be on easy streak, securing that bye and home field advantage all the way towards the 8th Cup.
Yeah, well, Queens going into McMaster trying to keep that momentum building. But right now, McMaster is looking really solid. Last week, McMaster's, they haven't played one of the top OUA teams yet, but against Ottawa, which is, still talking about a good CIS team, but Cal Quinlan just goes in and completes over 81% of his passes, 3 touchdowns, rushes for for another touchdown and is just in complete control of his game right now. So, if Queens want to come in and beat McMaster, they have to come in and disrupt that quarterback. If Kyle Quinlan can feel at ease behind his offensive line, it's going to be a long day for Queens. But if they can apply some pressure, knock him down early in the game and try to make him uneasy in that pocket, who knows what can happen? Because like we all know, Queens, they can hang in there and have a good quarterback, a good running back, a good receiving core, solid defense. They're well coached. So right now it's the two teams that are top the OUA, the cream of the crop, coming in for a showdown in McMaster. So it's still early in the season, but like you said, it's one of those games that might decide who gets to finish first and get the bye week and who gets to finish second. So still early in the season, but right now, in my book, McMaster is the team to beat, and at home, it's going to be really hard for Queens to get a win. So they compete. They show they're one of the top 5 teams in the country, but they can't win against McMaster this week.
McMaster just on a roll since last season. As soon as Kyle Quinlan came back, just seemed to be rolling ever since. And then we'll keep moving on into the West. The West this week, we saw some pretty exciting matchups. Calgary defeating Manitoba 33-12. Don't let that score mistake you, because it was 9-8 at the half in that game for Calgary. What happened for Calgary to just take over the game? Manitoba looked like they had a chance there hosting Calgary.
Well, I won't pretend like I saw the game. Obviously I can look at the stat sheet, and I know the team. I haven't seen the game. So you ask, what happened for them to take over the game? Well, my answer is, that's a really well coached team. And when Blake Mill comes in at halftime and talks to his team and goes, guys, it's only 9-8. Like, what the heck are you doing? You get some players that wake up and the quarterback Eric Zlewski, completes 3 touchdown passes, 2 of them in the second half. And then Chris Dobko, an all-star receiver in his third year, having a huge impact, catching 2 touchdown passes on 13 catches and 180 yards. So, for Calgary, it's a slow start, and you can't afford slow starts when you're going to play, top teams in the country late in the season. But right now, Calgary, it's one of those teams that, even if they get a slow start, they have the weaponry to just pile up points really quickly late in the game, and that's what happened. 17 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. For Manitoba, it's a good showing. They can leave that game knowing that they can and will compete against Calgary. When the end of the season come and the playoffs. But obviously, they can't come out of this satisfied, because at 9-8, they have a shot at winning that game, and they just can't make it happen. Turning the ball over, 3 interceptions and losing 1 fumble. So that's the name of the game for them. They create 0 turnovers and they turn the ball over 4 times. So you can't win against a top team like Calgary if you turn over the ball that much. So right now, Calgary, proving they're the top team, in the Can West, and Manitoba is stuck in that 3-way tie at 2-1. With Saskatchewan and Regina. So a big battle coming up with those 3 teams for the rest of the season.
Regina defeating Alberta 31-17 in the final matchup in the West last week. Saskatchewan winning 39-34 against UBC. Again, like you, I don't get an opportunity to watch these West games, but just looking at the box score, how does Saskatchewan gut this one out? UBC had 566 yards of offense. What is UBC thinking right now down 0-3?
Yeah, well, and for UBC, it's a tough process. Getting those 2011 wins vacated. Finishing the season at 0-8. If after those disqualifications, and early in the season, I think it was the first game. Was talking with Jim Mullen earlier today, and he told me, right now, Heck Clayton winner Billy Green is playing on one leg. Injured his knee in the opener, is probably at 60% right now. They thought about, sidelining him for the season, so he could heal and come back, but he decided to go out and play anyways. So, you take away one leg out of Billy Green, well, you take away, part of what he does. And he still manages to run the ball 12 times for 83 yards and 1 touchdown. But, if we can put things in perspective, we remember last year Billy Green was one of the top rushers in the country. He can throw the football, and he did it really well, throwing it for 209 yards. But then, if you put a guy like that on one leg, well, you take away half of his game. And then, it's hard for them to really fuel off that quarterback that they have. So right now, UBC at 0-3, and then next week playing against Calgary, they're probably gonna have some problem winning that one. So when have you seen a former Head Crichton winner starting the season 0-4? It's not the kind of thing that you see happen that usually see happen. But for them right now, they have to regroup, they have to refocus. They got a ton of new players playing on defense. Those guys got to stick together, and it's going to be hard for them to kind of try to squeeze in the playoff spot with three other teams. Saskatchewan at 2-1, like I said, Regina and Manitoba at 2-1 as well. So if they fall, UBC falls into a hole at 0-4. If they lose next week, that's going to be a big hole to try to get out of. So, like I said, I haven't seen the game. I wish I would. But right now, Saskatchewan, that's what matters. They managed to get a win, with a field goal at the end of the game. They secured that win, and that's what it is. They prevail, they get that win, they move on. For UBC, they try to regroup, but right now it's hard to be a UBC player and a UBC fan.
Well, the big matchup next week has to be Regina 2-1 versus Saskatchewan, hosted by Saskatchewan. Will be in Saskatoon. This will be a big matchup, especially since both teams at 2-1, both teams having lofty expectations. The Huskies always a perennial powerhouse in the West. Regina with Mark Mueller back, expecting big things this year. What is your prediction for this game?
Well, right now you have a Regina team that is really solid. They're built to have success this year with, I believe, 19 fifth-year players on the team. Like you said, Mark Mueller, coming back and trying to lead his team to the playoffs and beyond. So that's definitely one of the matchups to look out for. Right now, in my rankings, I got Regina as the number 1-2 team in the West, obviously behind Calgary. But, that Regina, Manitoba, Saskatchewan trio is just, it's hard to see what's going to come out of this. Regina and Saskatchewan haven't played one another. Saskatchewan losing out to Manitoba 31-28 on the second game of the season, and then you have I'm just trying to look at my numbers at the same time. Manitoba hasn't played Regina yet, so you kind of don't know which team does what. Obviously, the home field is a big advantage there. So, who knows what happens. But I got my money on Regina on this one just because of that veteran leadership. Mark Mueller coming back from an injury and looking good early in the season. So I believe, that veteran leadership at quarterback, and he obviously has the weapons around him, allows Regina to come in and win that game. So that's how I see it for that game.
Well, thank you very much, JP, for joining us this week on Rouge Radio, making some sense of a pretty foggy week last week in CIS football. For Kevin Garbullo, I'm joined by JP Chouret, and this was the Rouge Radio podcast on RougeRadio.com.